All right, welcome to another alumni career conversation. My name is Bryan Kanney, and today I have with us the lovely Kevin Gunter. So Kevin is a 2000 alum of the International Health and Policy Management Program, which we now know today as the Global Health Policy and Management Program. So I want to welcome you to this virtual show, Kevin.
Thanks.
Thanks for being here. And I want to publicly thank you for always being willing to engage with our office. I'm happy that we were able to connect and make something work here. So thank you for,
Of course.
yeah, thank you for being here. So Kevin is, I want to make sure I get your title correct. You're Senior Project Officer with Management Sciences for Health, which is here in the greater Boston area. Is that in Medford?
Yeah. No, working in Medford.
Okay. So, I mean, you have been, MSH was your first destination essentially after Heller, and you've been with them for the 8 years since. So you must, that's quite a long time. That's quite a good longevity there. So do you care to talk about maybe how your experience at MSH has been and moving from position and different opportunities that's really kept you there for so long?
Sure. MSH has a great, as an organization, it has a great mantra of an old quote from Lao Tzu, which is starts off with "Go to the people." Talks a lot about going to the people, learning from them, living with them, and once you know, you can teach them skills by interacting with them and living and learning with them. So part of that mantra really kind of shook me, and is exactly what I've always wanted to do. Prior to Brandeis, I was a Peace Corps volunteer and spent a lot of time working with village health workers. So it really attracted me to the organization. I came onto the organization it took me just about a year to get on with Management Sciences for Health after I left Brandeis. And once I got on, I started as a project associate, which is a very admin generated position, a lot of admin, but it's also an introduction to project management. They kind of say 6 months of skill building before you really get your feet on the ground to how the project management works. The organization is very diverse. We have a pharmaceutical management unit, we have a health systems management unit, and it's changed over time quite a bit on our approaches, but generally it's been all healthcare system building and strengthening. So I predominantly worked in the health system strengthening program. I currently work in the health delivery projects group. So I've changed over time. I spent almost 2 years as a project associate and then moved up to a project officer for a couple more years and then eventually a senior project officer. I started in Latin America covering projects for Latin America projects, moved on eventually to a project officer where I supported Afghanistan. We had a large $37 million project in Afghanistan of rebuilding the healthcare system there. And that actually added on to a lot of different programs we've had there since 2002. So that program was really about 10 years later and seeing all the results and the impact of what we had done and other organizations had done in Afghanistan. And it was highly promoted because it was very successful to bring down the maternal mortality rates, a lot of other outcomes in Afghanistan. So I worked several years as a project officer, and then the funds tend to shift depending on USAID priorities or CDC priorities. That's the majority of our donors. So I spent a lot of time in African regions and then in Asia region as well. I left the Latin American region for those. So a lot of my work was projects in anything from health system strengthening to building community health center development, pharmaceutical management a bit. There's a wide variety at MSH where you can get involved in. Every project is small, whether it be a private donor and they want something specific to take place in a country, or it's a large, several tens of millions of dollars, upwards of $100 million to support an entire health system. Mm-hmm. And those funds kind of shift in the project management unit. As you win projects, you kind of jump on these projects. They assign you and you support them in every way that you can for implementing a project. The majority of the projects will usually have a team in country that manages the implementation. Mm-hmm. And at home office, it's a lot different at the home office because you're supporting the team in the field. There's a lot of requirements that are attached to these project implementation, which are your deliverables, your reporting, your financial reporting, and a lot of your monitoring evaluation reporting all goes into that. With a large team in the field, it's a little easier to be able to support them. But the larger projects obviously have a lot of different levels of support and a lot of different technical areas that they're supporting out there. So in that position, you're a little bit of everything, and you're the main coordinator as a project manager. Whatever level you are, you're the main support that they're contacting from the field for everything. So as a home office person, you're reaching out to finance, you're reaching out to HR, all the different areas within all the different departments within your organization to coordinate and make sure that the people in the country are getting all the services needed. Needed services. Smaller projects are more difficult. You don't have a team in country. Sometimes you have a very small team or none, and that is very difficult because you have to hire teams of consultants or staff and send them there to do specific work, and it's kind of in and out. There's a lot of areas in project management that you don't actually think about. You get this degree and you're thinking you're going to go out and do development, but then you're dealing with how do I rent a building, an office space in Tanzania, for example? How do I get a lease going? How do I get bank accounts going? All those different areas that you don't think about, you know, they're not this like shiny thing of going out and helping people in communities, training nurses and doctors. That's the more interesting stuff, but in the same sense, you got to build that groundwork of how you're going to run a massive project in these countries and support it all. And, you know, developing a budget and making sure you're aligned with the laws in the country for hiring somebody, standard hiring practices, and whether it be allowances and per diem or every cost that's involved for hiring somebody, making sure you're going with the laws. So it's quite developed, and it's quite a large area that you're constantly covering.
Yeah, so what is your approach? You had mentioned, oh, you know, grad school didn't necessarily prepare me for this, you know, so what is your reaction in those situations where you find yourself, shoot, you know, I'm not sure how to proceed with this?
So there's a lot of areas you really have to just jump in and ask people who have been more trained and spent years there. You really look towards the older people that have been there for a while to get to train you and help you out. A lot of them will come in and mentor you on different processes and reaching out to different departments. When it comes to technology pieces, you have to find ways to learn. And as a more junior staff member at a larger organization where there's a lot of people hitting retirement and they're really not interested in learning the latest Zoom technology, but they need to use it for a meeting, that's where you can kind of jump in. So it's helpful for you to learn those different platforms, jump in and say, look, I know how to do this. And they'll bring you into those meetings. You sit down and then suddenly you're a part of that team. And suddenly you're listening in and they'll start to request more and more things from you and eventually bring you in for help. It's been a big thing I've noticed throughout my going on 9 years now at MSH, where wherever you can put yourself kind of in view and show that you can do anything, something or anything, it's always grateful. So YouTube, anything you can find that gets you up to speed of the latest technology or the latest things coming out. Very helpful.
Yeah, so it certainly appears that you need to be flexible and adaptable in your role. And I imagine that home sign is indicative that you're working from home. So this is something that you've had to be flexible with. So I assume that there are several implications with COVID on your role.
Yeah, it's been a very difficult thing because COVID didn't hit the U.S. It's hit the entire world. So all of our offices are closed. All of our staff are working from home. So there's a difficulty not only here, but their staff are home. They may not have the greatest internet connection. They can't go out to meetings. They can't meet with the ministries of health. They can't do a lot of their implementation that they need to do. So it's very difficult. They're at home. They're trying to make calls. So it's been a change. We've been able to adapt and use it. Our staff are very flexible in the field. More so, I'd say, than sometimes the home office is they're able to adapt and do things. So as we go, kind of move on, things are opening up and we're slowly finding ourselves being able to implement things and how we can do it.
Yeah. Do you feel that, I think the last time that we talked a lot about sort of hiring. So is hiring happening, I guess. So I know that sort of field is different than home office.
Mhm.
I'm just wondering how COVID has impacted that.
Yeah, hiring is basically within these organizations, it's dependent on projects. So they will hire new staff if you win a lot of projects, then that will hire those staff on. When you lose projects, they will reduce their size. More so happens in the field when you have a 5-year award and it's over and you haven't won a follow-on project, then all of those staff are laid off. So it's even more difficult for them. Here in the home office, we've gone through this many times over the years where you'll staff up and then you lose a lot of projects and people will go to the organizations or laid off. So that's also a difficult thing. Right now, we've actually been able to win a lot of projects this year.
Great.
Recently released them because COVID is fading to a point to where they say, okay, you've won them, now figure out how to implement them.
Wow.
Um, our donors can be very much like that. You've won, now figure it out.
Here's this
So
money, now go safely.
exactly. So you have to be very adaptable and constantly thinking, how are we going to do this? How are the people in the field going to do this? So yes, there's a lot of growing and shrinking and growing and shrinking as it goes. A big example too, I started in the Latin American portfolio and there was a ton of projects in Latin America. And now there's very, very few projects there. Not a lot of funding is going. So if USAID or CDC or whoever the donor is shifting their priorities over the years, PEPFAR funding as well, you'll notice the shift, change regions, and it'll change areas depending on the country needs.
Yeah, I guess it's sort of the nature of the beast, regardless of region, is
Mm-hmm.
you're trying to not eliminate, but to manage sort of a challenge. And then once the project is gone and the challenge no longer exists, then the work isn't there.
Yeah, and you come in with certain skills. Like I speak Spanish. I lived in Latin America, so it was a perfect fit in portfolio. But then I ended up on Central Asia and Afghanistan. Spanish is worthless there.
Slightly different, sounds different.
So you really have to adapt. You have to adapt. Whatever languages you can come bring to the table are always good. If you know more than one, French is always needed.
Mm.
Any of the colonial languages are very important because your projects and your funding suddenly end in the language you speak and can really converse and do well with your projects, and now you're on something else.
Absolutely. I find that a lot working with students when they ask about the skills section. I'm like, let's highlight those language skills. All of these positions are at least preferring someone who speaks another language. So let's be sure to have that on there. So I imagine in your time at MSH, going on 9 years now, that you've had some hiring experience, whether as a hiring committee or as the hiring manager. What advice would you give for applicants or students who are seeking opportunities with organizations like MSH?
So the main things I would say would be to, for example, highlight those skills that you don't really think are as much important. Languages are extremely important. You're talking about global healthcare systems, so your countries wherever. You really need to highlight those skills. You never know when someone's going to pull you in and say, oh, I need someone who speaks this language. Always good to put the languages. Always good to put technical skills. If you have any skills, for example, in the area of maternal and child health, always great to show that. Where have you been and what have you done? Those are big key things. Degrees are nice, but people really want to know what have you done and where have you been and done it. I've not only hired for my company, but we've taken on small different awards. We were aligned with Pfizer and the Pfizer Global Health Fellows. And so we have this situation where we're hiring, permanent employees with Pfizer to kind of do a 3 to 6 month project and support our teams. And you're looking through their resumes and they have these amazing resumes on all the technical skills, but then you're trying to go, how does that apply to the project?
Yeah.
So in this case, you really need to do some research on what these organizations do when you're looking at them. What areas do you think you can match your skills and highlight those skills on there?
So certainly those essential skills. And I think, so changing technology, you had mentioned, definitely being adaptable, as those essential skills. Are there any in particular that you would say are more needed at this juncture?
I would say adaptability is just probably the primary one because you're going to go in wanting something, but that's not what they may want.
Mm.
You really have to back up and say, what does this organization need, not what I need?
Mm.
What you're doing is presenting your skills to them and they get to choose from them and say, hey, we need these. So you can have a great amount of experience in something, but are you fit for that organization's need? We hire dependent on people on what we need for our projects. So we hire, if we have the money, then we start hiring. Even within the organization, promotional, it's very frustrating. People want to get promoted and move up, but if there's no funding, there's no reason to promote you. So it's very key to be humble in that and understand, how can I align? What do people need? So my technology skills, what do this organization need? And show that, and then always be adaptable and ready to learn new skills. You never, I tell all of the more junior level people, you never say no to something. It's left that's going to really affect you personally. If there's a task, it may be the worst task. You don't want to do it. It's boring. You had to do something that's just ridiculous, but it will set you up later in life, later on in your career. I've had this happen many times, and so has others, is you say, yeah, sure, I'll take this on. And you do it, and then suddenly you're the only one who knows how to do it. So when a project or a staff member needs help in something, they're going to go around, who knows how to do this? And it could be the most ridiculous thing you did, of just collecting data and or collecting invoices and checking them off. Who's good at this? And so that's where you can stand apart. Because in an organizations where there's people with 30, 40 years of skills in a technical area, you're nothing in that area. So you need to show how you're able to adapt and provide them with what they need. And then they'll bring you in to support you and help you.
Yeah, absolutely. Those skills are essential. I find myself having conversations a lot with students who have this perception that success is direct A to Z, and I've got this degree and I want to market this and that. And so we have a conversation about, well, let's look at the job description and see what's really being asked here, and highlight those skills and qualify yourself, demonstrate those skills so that you're really talking to the employer.
Yeah, I found I took a course in project management through the NGO. There's an NGO organization who trains a lot of the project management skills. I found a repeat from what I'd learned at Brandeis. Some of the other courses I love to take, I didn't able to. So you'll find yourself repeating some of the things and go, oh, I already know this, or I missed out on this. I really need to learn this. And you do get that flexibility.
Yeah. So with keeping in mind that the Global Health Policy Management Program is roughly 50% international students, 50% domestic students, is there specific advice you would give to international students or sort of seeking to work in the United States?
Absolutely. I would start off by thinking, first of all, it's very difficult. You have to have an incredible amount of experience and a special skill to be hired as an international student. And part of that is the company has to pay for the visa. And when they pay for the visa, they have to provide evidence that shows you have those special skills and that training, and that they can't hire another person here in the US over you. If they can provide that, then yes, it's easier to hire an international person. So unless you have that experience, 20, 30 years of experience, it doesn't make actually sense to start working here at the home office, because all of our projects are in the field. We're not doing project health system development in the US. We're doing it internationally. So those people that are attached to those projects in the field are gaining this valuable experience. As a US citizen here, it's hard because I can't go out there and do it. I would love to be on the field and work. That's more of my passion, but then all the benefits of being an expat in the country is very, very expensive.
Yeah.
Don't want to send an expat out there when there's a local, highly trained, knows the language, knows the culture, etc. So for an international person to gain that experience in whatever country they're in, or they have citizenship or a visa too, those are the people we're looking for. And those are key people. Expats are the last people we use. TCN, which is basically a national of another country, but the region, are often the second people we use. So for example, we have a large operation in Nigeria right now, but if we need support in Tanzania or South Africa or something, we're going to pull those regional people in and pull them over to work, because it's a little bit easier to move. Like I said, culture and language sometimes is hugely beneficial. And we're going to pull those people in. We've used people, for example, in Central America or Latin America, Portuguese speaking people, Brazilians, to go over to Angola, because guess what? They speak Portuguese. It's different, but very similar. and they can slide into a role so much similar than a person here at the home office. Home office people are usually sent last result. If we need to do something very, very particular, then they would go out. What you get here at the home office is a whole type of management too. It's dealing with a company, a large company, and all that goes on with it, strategy building and operations and finance. Those are the main things. In the country, if you are a technical person, you're actually out in the field. You're helping to train nurses. You're helping to work with communities to support their local health facility, training midwives, training nurses. All of that is the experience that we want people, because we're going to rely on them to do our work, and all of our reporting, all of our evidence-based is going to be because of the work they do.
You offer really great insight here. Essentially, for international students, it's not impossible. They really have to stand out and be specialized to work in the United States versus returning home or to a nearby country and really gaining those skills, which is where you're saying they're valued essentially.
Yeah, it's not only you're just not gonna get the experience that you want. The majority of international people we have at the home office, like I said, have spent 20, 30 years out in the field with some of the expats. Things have changed in the 70s and 80s. A lot more expats were out there doing the work, but it's changed because we built capacity out there. A lot of capacity is built. You have people graduating university in these countries with a lot of experience already and great degrees. So those are the people we're going to be sweeping up right away. Or you degree from the US. It's not really that different whether you have a degree from a university in the country or the US. It's where you have that experience, where you have that training. You can't always say, even working with the healthcare system here, it's not quite always applicable to go out there and send you out there when it's a whole different type of world in your healthcare system.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I'm thinking about the global health program, and it's 9 months. I assume it was 9 months when you were a student as well. Yeah, so it's a really intense 9-month program. So I'm wondering, international, domestic aside, what sort of general advice would you give to a student who's entering this really accelerated, fast-paced academic program, a master's in 9 months?
So that's another thing I was talking about with home office support. For example, if you're working here at the home office, things you need to know: finance, project management, monitoring evaluation, operations, strategic operations, policy making. All of those are very, very important here at the home office because that's the main work you're doing. Talking about specific work of creating monitoring plans in the field, that's something that's going to be basically generated in the field. So I work a lot with the field. Whenever I create a plan, an implementation plan, it's always with the field because they're the ones on the ground. They have the eyes, they have the views, so they know what's going on. Also, they're having all the meetings with the ministry officials and other partners. So you're pulling all that together and working with them to make sure you have everything up to speed. So those skills are great to have, but if you're looking, for example, to be project management, you want to build all of those various skills and finance and everything. Both for your technical officers too. Your technical people are going to need to learn that, but that's not their priority. Their priority is a specific technical area.
Yeah, so those skills aside, what sort of value do you find in maintaining relationships with Heller, your peers from your 2011 group cohort?
So that's a great question because
Great.
when you're in school, it's kind of, you meet all these people, it's very fun, you've developed these relationships, and then you think, I'm never going to see these people again. You really have that in your mind. You don't say it, but it's kind of in your mind. But then the next thing you know, you're in Afghanistan and you're going to a meeting at the Ministry of Health with a specific person that's working in health financing. And sure enough, it's your friend from Heller who you spent the whole time. You end up talking about Waltham and Heller for the first 20 minutes of the meeting. But then you have to get work going. So all of those connections are very important. I literally get on new projects. There was a conference I was involved in here recently, and the scheduling list, I got a hold of the list, and it's an old Heller student from at the World Bank, It's an old Heller student from the UN. It's really, really interesting. And I'm looking down this list, kind of laughing like, oh, they were part of my group too, part of my group, part of my group. Um, I don't know what it was in my generation. We're out there in the field now, almost
Mhm.
later. And it's really cool to just see these lists of all of these Heller students who I was friends with are now at all these other organizations. And here I'm going to be in a meeting with them. And yeah,
So it wasn't necessarily that that you kept in regular contact with them between grad school and now. It's just
yeah.
you're sort of, oh, this is such a small network of professionals, and inevitably you're going to encounter those Heller peers again.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think a big lesson learned too is understanding it's a small world out there. It's things go around, these people trade organizations every couple of years and everyone kind of circles through. So you're going to work with Heller people and work from people from other areas, but it's going to always come around. So you work with some of these people, it's very important to develop these relationships with the people you work with and the other organizations you work with. Because there may come a time you're tired of what you're doing in your organization, you're going to want to switch, and you've worked with them in the field already and someone at that organization. So you can, write them like, hey, how's it going? We've worked on this project together. I'm looking to make a transition. Not only there's going to be Heller people there, but people you've worked with along the way too.
Yeah, I mean, it's always best to put your best foot forward, to be humble, to be genuine, because your network is forever your network, and you just never know when you might need to connect or use them for something.
Yeah. I, when I first started MSH, there was somebody that kind of did the training for new staff. And she made a comment of never kind of watch what you say, but be careful how you present yourself, because the next thing you know, you're going to be sitting on a 10-hour flight next to the person you know, got in an argument with because the development world is small. And,
Yeah.
these flights are coming from small countries and you'll all be together. And it was a really good point. It was kind of brutal, that lesson learned, but it was also on a beneficial side. You're going to be working with these people 10 years down the road. You may be working with them again. And your donors as well. I've found that out. Your donors will pass. People that work at USAID or CDC or the Gates Foundation, they'll kind of trickle out the country you think you'll never see them again. And you go into a new country and you have to meet with USAID. And here's that person you haven't seen in 10 years. They may be paying for your project. They may have been very in the rear.
Well,
You know how to work with them.
yeah, hopefully you played nice all this time and you have good rapport and relationships so you can keep this going. So I'll ask you one last question, and I'm sorry I didn't prompt you this, but what sort of positive movement or something optimistic from the field should we know about?
Just in general.
Yeah, I mean, like COVID sort of feels daunting, and I just want some optimism and some happiness to end this sort of conversation about health.
Sure. So I think there's a lot of interesting things happening right now. One of the biggest things I think that just the technology that people are putting in, countries are putting in health information systems right now, which is amazing because it's been slow and it's been hard, but getting these health information systems in place and checking and monitoring them is such key, because when you have your entire country and there's rural communities now suddenly reporting in, they're getting, for example, a village in a rural country, they're getting multiple, 10 to 20 people all reporting a fever in the same time. And those information is being put back in the health information system back in the country. The country's able to start to see there's something going on in this area of our country right now where people are all showing the same symptoms. This is then reported whether it be the CDC or other countries' CDC, because they have examples of CDC as well. They have departments for disease prevention. So getting all of that going and getting all that data in and those systems being able to speak together is the next greatest thing to stopping pandemic.
Mm-hmm.
We can spot it right off the bat. Right now, the WHO is sending, disease hunters, virus hunters out there, and they're checking and they're doing so much work, for example, in the DRC. But getting these systems to talk and then talk globally is going to be the greatest thing, because then we'll be able to localize and stop things right away as you see them start to spread.
Great. So there is some level of optimism to all of it,
Absolutely,
which is
absolutely. A lot of
encouraging.
countries are still slow to build this, and we're working hard. It takes a lot of time and a lot of rules and law changes and policy changes, and then just implementation of getting people trained of how to put the data in and how to report it and it as well. But that is changing, and it's really, really cool to see all of these countries starting to talk and starting to put that in and track this because there will be another pandemic. We don't know when, but it would be great to know that these systems are going to be able to help stop another one.
Yeah, so it's one thing to put all of this data and information into a system, but unless it informs and it's reaching, remote communities even, then it's just data.
Yep,
Yeah. All right. Well, I want to thank you for your time. So thanks so much for being with us, Kevin. I do.
absolutely.
Yeah.